We're told in the Bible of King Saul, who was often discomforted with an evil spirit. And the way that he was able to counter that was David played music for him. Now, we don't know what type of music David played, but we do know that music plays an important part in soothing, as they say, the savage beast. I want to encourage you to think about the music that you're listening to. In fact, Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 says, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things." Our choice of music is important to us because it can either help to soothe or it can help to enrage. I want to encourage you as you go through the day and as you realize that maybe you need to calm down, think about the music that you're listening to. Choose music that's going to be uplifting, that's going to bring about healing, as opposed to music that's going to continue to get us enraged. God gave us the gift of music. Let's use it wisely to bring healing and not harm.
The information shared in this show is for the sole purpose of being informative, should not be considered complete, and does not cover all issues related to mental health. This information should not replace consultations with your doctor, other qualified mental health providers, and/or specialists. If you believe you or another individual is suffering from a mental health crisis or other medical emergencies, contact your doctor immediately, seek medical attention immediately in an emergency room, or emergency mental health services.
Yesterday, we had part number 1 of a very impactful and powerful discussion on how to deal with difficult people. If you didn't get a chance to catch it, go back and look at yesterday's episode. It is imperative for you to watch it, and it'll inform the things that you're going to see today. But I need you to know that I want you to go ahead and get settled. Don't watch it by yourself. Get a family member, get a coworker, or a friend as we go into part number 2 of the conversation on how to deal with difficult or toxic people. So talk to me about boundaries. Not to me, talk to us about boundaries. We hear that language a lot. And I think most people hear it and it sounds a little amorphous, kind of ethereal, like, all right, that's college talk. Mm-hmm. What do boundaries or healthy boundaries look like?
That's a great question.
Especially in dealing with difficult people.
Yeah.
What does that look like? How does that show up Tuesday at work,
right,
when you got to be around your relatives this Sunday afternoon?
Right.
What does that look like?
Right, definitely. I think that boundaries are critically important for us to maintain our own wellness in the midst of many relationships.
Okay.
A lot of times people misunderstand boundaries because they think that boundaries are me telling someone else how they need to behave.
Okay.
When boundaries are in reality letting people know how you will respond if they do not abide by certain standards of behavior or relationship that you would like them to live up to. So a boundary is saying, if you continue to speak to me this way, I'm going to leave.
Okay.
Right? A boundary
Gotcha.
isn't saying you can't talk to me this way.
Right.
A boundary is saying I won't endure that.
This is a self-managing process.
Exactly. So the boundary is set up so that it helps you manage yourself, like you said. And I think it really correlates with what Jesus said when he said, if your brother strikes you on the cheek, turn the other cheek, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a text that a lot of people struggle with. Where they're like, I'm not
Right.
turning any cheeks. I'm not giving over another coat. We really want to do an ear for an ear and an eye for an eye. But what I think that text is really teaching us is to not allow how other people mistreat us to cause us to mistreat others, to not do an eye for an eye or an ear for an ear. Don't let how this person has wounded you turn you into somebody else who wounds others. And I think the text is calling us away from that kind of vengeance, or that kind of I'm going to get mine.
Right.
So when we're talking about boundaries, a great book on boundaries is called Boundaries. It's called Boundaries.
Right.
It's by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend.
Right.
And there's a text there because that they use within the book that in Galatians 6 that helped me so much.
Okay.
Because I don't think I had the best boundaries growing up. I thought, as Christians, we're just supposed to just kind of go through everything and just put a smile and everything's okay. But they highlighted Galatians chapter 6, where the writer is saying, carry one another's burdens, and in doing so, you fulfill the law of Christ. But then, in verse 5, it says, but let each one carry their own load. And so then it goes on to break down what's the difference between a burden and a load. And a burden is something that's really heavy, really difficult to carry, that probably isn't happening on a regular basis. Whereas a load is something that is continual, it is regular. A load is like your bills. Those are for you to carry, right? But a burden might be a sudden loss, it might be some grief, where now we're coming together as a community to support somebody.
Gotcha. Is there ever a time where I should give boundaries to family, maybe a sibling, an in-law, an adult child? Like, is that just something that's just workspace, classmate space, friend space, or does that same principle translate into family life?
Definitely. I mean, the counsel's given to us in Genesis where Adam and Eve.
It's one of the first commands of the Bible.
Exactly. Where you leave and you cleave, right?
Yeah,
so boundaries definitely apply in family relationships. In fact, we see the value of boundaries when we're coloring in color books, right? The reason why the picture turns out beautiful is because
you stay in the lines.
You stay in the lines.
Stay in the margins.
We see the boundaries and we respect the boundaries. And when we don't have boundaries in our familiar relationships, that can be a recipe for a lot of pain and a lot of disappointment, especially as we transition through the different phases of life, which means that you may not have had boundaries with your parents when you were a toddler. But you might start to develop a boundary now that you're in high school. And you might have some stronger boundaries now that you're in college.
Right.
And you should have some very good boundaries by the time you get married. But that as the phases of life, as you go through the various phases of life, the boundaries with family members could and should change. Wow.
So that's a sign of maturity and growth.
Definitely.
So let me ask you this. Is there ever a time, so we kind of, you hear the language that says, man, this is too small for me to respond to, and I'm not going to get down to their level. I'm not going to even react or respond. Is there ever a time where, okay, a person is, their personality or behaviors, it's grating on me, it's bothering me, it's bringing anxiety or some stress? Is there ever a time where I should just ignore it or quote unquote let it go, or do I need to approach it with a confrontation or boundaries? Or is there a time where it's the healthy or mature thing is to let it go?
That's a great question. There is definitely a time to let it go.
Okay.
If we stopped to talk to every person who cut us off on the road, or somebody who stepped on our shoes, we would never get anything done. And I think that almost just as dangerous as disobedience is distraction. And sometimes we end up so distracted by the various issues that are going on in our lives that we're not focused on the assignment that God has for us. So there are definitely times where you need to let it go. Things to assess for is that person's willingness and ability to take on your perspective. You can tell when somebody is just not able to hear. They're too angry, they're too frustrated, their temper is way too high. Those are opportunities for you to walk away, give those people an opportunity to come to themselves before you even think about trying to address anything. And then, there are just things that happen where people may offend you and they're not even thinking about you. Now, this is not to say that you should just let people walk all over you, but I think that we should have a level of a level of temperance, a level of self-control, where we're not responding to every single thing that comes our way and happens in our lives.
So I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
So how do I deal with a difficult kind of anxiety-inducing personality, but that person is a superior or someone I'm trying to show respect or reverence for? So maybe it's a boss. You can't just withdraw from your boss. Maybe it's a parent, and you're the child, but you want to show respect and honor.
Yeah.
But like there are behaviors that are adding stress, anxiety, derailing purpose or vision. Like how do you deal with that person? And you can't just withdraw, or even if you confront them, they're still in a position of maybe superiority professionally,
right.
Or it's a parent-child relationship.
Definitely. So a few things need to happen. One, if you're looking out for the health of the relationship, that's something to express.
Okay.
That this is not necessarily a personal gripe or personal angst, even if it might be impacting you personally,
Gotcha.
but that you want the working relationship to be healthy.
Gotcha.
So you can always approach it from that angle, especially if you're working with them and they're goal-driven, they're goal-oriented. If they can see how this friction in the relationship or communication style or conflict management style or just management style altogether is getting in the way of the goal, then you can center the common goal as something that is being injured by how things are unfolding. Another example of how to address conflict or issues when there's a difference in power dynamic, we see with Nathan when he approaches David, where he approaches with a whole lot of wisdom. He doesn't come in and say you're the man. No.
He uses a parable.
There we go.
I like that.
He takes some time to process because David was
That's
a shepherd.
a very thoughtful
Very
response.
thoughtful. Yeah. He kind of sets it up and he's like, what would you do if you heard that this man took this other man's sheep and he slaughtered it? And he kind of invokes the shepherd's heart in David.
Draws it out.
And after that, then he says, you are the man, right? So, of course, you may not have a parable that comes to mind right away. However, I think it does display the value of taking the time to think and to process and to pray before going into those conversations so that you are approaching it in such a way where people are able to listen. I think another thing that we have to be careful of is if we just want a venting session. Sometimes we enter into those conversations and we just want to let loose and let the person know what we really think or what we really feel, and that's not necessarily the best approach to be heard. You might need to vent to a friend or to your pastor, and then after you've gotten it all out, then you're ready to have that conversation in a constructive way.
Okay, all right. So let me ask you a question. All right, so I'm gonna throw a few questions or scenarios at you. All right. In trying to, because there's somebody at home, and they're trying to figure out, all right, am I dealing with a person that's just difficult or toxic? And I'm gonna throw some behaviors at you. And you tell me whether you think, all right, that's a toxic behavior or that's just kind of a difficult personality. All right, let's just say the person, they just tend to be consistently critical, not just of you, but just of things. Which category would you put them in?
Well, I would wonder why they're consistently critical. What is it that they are trying to protect themselves from by tearing everything down around them? And the other question I would have is, are they seeking help? Are they recognizing that they rarely have anything positive to say, that they tend to think the worst of people or things immediately? Where's that coming from before I would say, all right, this person is toxic or this person is difficult? If the person that's just how they operate, and and you've expressed your concern over and over and over again. That might be a difficult relationship that is now turning into a toxic one, where you may not feel safe, you may not feel appreciated, you may not even feel seen in that relationship, and that may over time necessitate distance or separation if they're not able to appreciate you. Now, is this family? What are we talking about here?
No, so we didn't categorize it. But let's just say it's a colleague at work.
Gotcha. So then a few things could help. One, if it's a colleague at work, hopefully you can create just a bit of separation. Number two, if you can understand what's going on with them. You don't need to know their whole story, but if you know that this is a pattern of thinking and behavior for them, then you should weigh that accordingly. Right? So if you find somebody who has balanced thinking and who is able to appreciate the good and also point out the challenges, then that's somebody you should pay a bit more attention to. But if you notice that this person never has anything good to say, then you should also now package that and realize, okay, I need to really add a whole lot of salt to what this person is saying, not just a grain of salt, because their perspective is skewed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. A person that always makes themselves a competitor. Like they're going to one up. Like, all right, man, you say, oh man, I went and caught 2 fish this weekend. Oh man, I caught a shark. I caught a whale. You know what I'm saying? That kind of personality. You know, is that somebody you can abide with, or is that somebody that you gotta, as you said, like you bear along with them, or do you you have to create space?
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
This is a friend.
Oh, this is a friend. Okay. Oh, thanks for categorizing.
Yeah, it's a friend.
So I love the hymn that says, or the song that says, he looked beyond my faults and he saw my need.
Okay, gotcha.
And I think with these kinds of situations, you can already start to see the brokenness. Like, why do they have to compete? Why do they have to feel like they have to one-up you in order to be enough? Why aren't they just comfortable in their own skin? Yeah. And I pray that if you were to encounter that or see that your heart would be broken for that person, and that you would just lift them up in prayer. Like, listen, I'm not in competition with you. I'm not trying to win. But I wish you didn't feel like you had to keep on one-upping me in order to feel comfortable. Even with the highly critical person, you can still look beyond their fault and see their need. And hopefully that can create a heart of compassion and even some patience with dealing with all of that.
Well, a person that shows interest in your romantic partner.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh. This is not just.
I mean, we said we're going to deal with it, right? I mean, can you abide with them, or do we have to Peter and Barnabas? I mean, Paul and Barnabas. How do we?
Yeah, that might be a Paul and Barnabas kind of situation. You should have a boundary.
No, and the reason I'm asking is I see this kind of messiness.
Mercy.
All the time.
Mercy.
And for whatever reason, there are people that struggle to, they're persons that they've shown themselves disloyal in that way. Yeah. And they've done that on multiple occasions.
Right.
And for whatever reason, there is a justification or willingness to abide or maintain a certain intimacy with that friend, even though they've kind of done that.
Definitely. Before I address it, I think I need to take a little bit of a detour.
Sure, please.
I think that what gets in the way of a lot of people addressing or confronting these issues is this term nice.
Nice, okay.
Nice is very ambiguous.
Sure. Yeah.
We're raised on nice.
Sure.
Be nice to this person, be nice to that person.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And we have somewhere along the way equated niceness with respect, niceness with courtesy.
Right.
And the two are not necessarily the same. Which means that you don't always have to be nice.
Yeah.
You don't always have to, and by nice, what I mean is you don't always have to make the person feel good about how you are addressing them or how you're addressing an issue. I think sometimes we spend too much time trying to manage how this person's going to feel about what I'm going to say. Yeah. But when Nathan approached David, he wasn't trying to be nice. Sure. When Paul had to address Peter when he was showing bias, he wasn't trying to be nice.
He sure wasn't. Yeah.
He was being loving. They were being respectful. They were being caring, but they weren't being nice. And I think sometimes we're so afraid of not being nice that we don't know how to address these situations. So I just want to dispel this myth of niceness. This is not an excuse to be rude, but this is to say that it is not our responsibility to manage how people are going to feel about what we have to say, especially when we say it in truth and when we say it in love. Okay. So now with that, if you are addressing somebody who has now shown interest in your spouse, number one, they've displayed poor boundaries. Yeah, right. And it would be unwise of us to trust them to display better boundaries in the future if they don't have those own boundaries on their own. So for the sake of your own marriage or your own relationship, you should create those boundaries in terms of letting them know, if I see anything, if I even catch a whiff of this ever again, I'm done. In fact, you might not even give them a second chance. To be honest with you, if you already knew that you were in a relationship, the second chance is not warranted. So I don't think we need to be afraid of setting those kinds of boundaries. We should be concerned if you want to set those boundaries and your partner is not trying to set those boundaries, then that's a whole other issue. Okay, all right. A couple more scenarios. Gotcha. This is fun for me. Yes. So let me ask you this. So you have a person, you're in a workspace. Yeah. A coworker or boss who demonstrates supremacist behaviors, either because of their race or their gender. How do you... That is a good question. Yeah. Something I use in professional settings is I ask questions. Okay. I ask questions.
I mean, they haven't said it. You just sense it. You just pick it up. You pick up on it. Yeah.
Right. So something that works is to start asking questions about what was your goal with that statement. Okay. What were you aiming at?
Okay.
Were you intending to make me feel this way, or were you intending to impact me in that way? Because oftentimes when people are subtle with their biases, or they're subtle with their insults, they don't want it brought to light what is actually going on. And sometimes our temptation is to try to just hit them back and say something. No. If you start to ask questions, and you start to shine a light on what's actually going on here, they're going to become uncomfortable, and they're going to realize that this is not a safe space for them to engage in that behavior.
Gotcha.
So that's something that you can use in a professional setting, even with your boss, and start to just ask questions like, okay, when you said that, what was your aim? What were you trying to drive at? And either they're going to veer away from it, or they're going to lean into it and expose themselves.
Okay. Relative who just feels entitled to your resources, maybe they borrow, they don't repay. How you process that?
Ooh, that's a good question. All right, so I have personal principles. One, I don't lend money.
You just give it.
I give it.
I receive that.
Yeah. Like if I don't have it to give, then I don't have it to lend, because if I don't want
that's a relationship
money
killer.
To get in the way of the relationship. So I need to be able to give it away, and if it never comes back, I know that our relationship is still very safe.
Correct.
But if I'm not in that position, then I'm not in a position to lend. That's just my own personal boundary, and it has served me well. If the person feels entitled to your resources, then that definitely warrants a conversation about where this entitlement is coming from, and you also setting up a boundary. A lot of times people don't want help, they just want what we have. And what I mean by that is that instead of doing the work, or maybe taking a bit of money as seed money to build something, they just want you to keep bailing them out. And it's important for us to know, I'm saying this to parents as well, that's not love.
It's not love.
It's not love when you keep bailing them out of the situation. Sometimes, like the prodigal son, you have to allow them to experience the results of their decisions so that they know how to come back home.
Okay. Last one. All right. Gossiper. Person that likes to, who traffics information.
Mercy.
Now, maybe they haven't gossiped, at least that you're aware of, about you.
Right.
But they, can you have a healthy relationship with somebody who uses information to harm others or gain leverage with other people?
Right. That is a double-edged sword. It is eventually going to turn on you. If they gossip to you,
gonna cut you.
They're going to gossip about you. Like, there's no loyalty in gossip.
Right.
And I don't believe that it is possible to have the kind of relationship that we want to have with the Lord while entertaining those kinds of relationships at the same time. When we delight in the pain and the misery of others, then it shows something about how much we love our fellow man, which is, half of the law, right? So love the Lord your God with all your heart, and then love your brother, love your neighbor with all your heart. When we're not doing that, it says something about how much we love the Lord and how much we love his creation as well.
Gotcha.
So we have to be very careful about those kinds of relationships. That doesn't
just say something about them, it says something about you.
It says something about you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So listen, our time is gone, but do me a favor, just share maybe one or two final admonitions with our audience, just in terms of maybe there's something you didn't get a chance to put in, share earlier, but just you're dealing with a difficult personality. Just give one or two final admonitions, maybe in a 30-second window as we wrap up.
Great. Biggest thing with dealing with difficult people is understanding the vulnerabilities within yourself. Difficult people have a way of stepping on our toes in the most personal ways that can tend to evoke a response that is out of character, that is not representative of who we are or who we're trying to be. So the best way to manage conflict with difficult people is to learn to manage yourself. If you can't manage yourself, you can't manage those situations.
Amen. That's a good word today, man, brother. You shared some gems, man, that are just an absolute blessing. And we appreciate you taking out the time to be here with us. Thank you for coming all the way from Boston.
Glad to be here,
and
man.
Hanging out, having a couple days with us here in the South.
Yes.
It's been a rich blessing. Listen, I pray that word helped you, that it blessed you, that it encouraged you, and that it gave you a rubric for which you can, address some of the difficult personalities that may be in your workspace, in your private space, or in your family space. At the end of the day, I think each and every one of us are going to deal with some personalities that are not the ones that we would necessarily choose. We believe that some are assigned by God, but then there may be some that are planted by the enemy to help distract and derail you from your purpose. And so I want to encourage you to make sure that you take notes of what was shared, go back, rewatch it, and make sure you digest and meditate on some of the principles that were shared from the Word and just some good practices that reflect sound judgment and right practice. So listen, I'm praying that you will be intentional about continuing in the revolution, being intentional each and every day to make sure that you don't make any excuses for ignoring your emotional and mental wellness. I'm praying that today you walk in wholeness, that you walk in victory, and I look forward to seeing you same time, same place tomorrow. God bless. What's good, everybody? The excuseless revolution is underway and lives are being radically changed. There are some of you that have the hard copy of the book. There's some that have the ebook. But I want you to know we've heard the call and the audiobook is now available on Audible. There are some of us that need to see the word, some of us need to hear it, but however you receive it, God be praised. I want to encourage you to go on to Audible, get your version, and continue the journey of becoming excuseless. Hello, I'm Pastor Debleaire Snell, Speaker Director for the Breath of Life television ministry. This ministry was established to take the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout North America and across the globe. My goal is to make Jesus Christ known through the preaching of the word. I need you to know that we need your financial partnership in order to make sure that the gospel can go into every hill, into every rural county, and into every inner city. And we can only take the gospel as far as the gifts that you lend to us. We thank you for your financial partnership in the past, and I'm asking that you would continue to be a financial partner with this ministry going forward. Here are some ways you can give. You can give online at our website at www.breathoflife.tv. You can send your gift by mail to Breath of Life, P.O. Box 5960, Huntsville, Alabama 35814. You can call the office at 256-929-6460, or you can text the phrase "Give to BOLTV" to 188-364-GIVE, or the easiest thing is through Cash App at $Breath of Life TV. I want you to know that every dime that you give goes right back into the ministry so that we can enlarge our reach and make sure that the entire world knows that Jesus saves and that Jesus Christ is coming again. God bless you, and we thank you for your generosity to the Breath of Life ministry.